My personal opinion, and that of our organisation, is that a Ford can win the championship but can't win Bathurst. Now, that's not the view of Supercars. Supercars are quite firm that if a Ford had track position a couple of months ago, it likely would have taken the checkered flag first. And maybe there's some merit in that argument, but I think we need to do better. You ready?
Yep, go.
Welcome to Speedcafe Summer Grill, powered by KTM. I'm Ryan Story. Joining me today is Andrew Van Leeuwen, Editor-in-Chief of Speedcafe.com. And alongside me here is Stefan Bartholomaeus, Managing Editor of Speedcafe.com. Why Speedcafe.com has 16 editors and only one writer is a question none of us can answer, but maybe we can get to the bottom of that right here, right now. AVL?
This is coming from the man who's rated the entire paddock of engineers this year. So I'm looking forward to seeing all of the titles you come up with for those. Of course, we are joined by Dr. Ryan Story, who really wanted to... Actually, it's been quite a swashbuckling entrance. He's come in, he's demanded alcohol. He wanted a rider. You need to provide the rider details before you come in. So this has been a lot of fun already, and we've only just started recording. So anyway, how are you, Ryan?
Look, I'm terrific, and I was really hoping that we were actually recording our conversation earlier, because there was some nuggets of gold in that.
That would have made a heck of a podcast, I'll tell you right now.
You would have had 2 months of headlines and clickbait out of that one, I'll tell you.
No clickbait required on that.
Let's just start on the season as a whole.
And look, forgive me, sorry for taking over, but it was just it was just a bit of fun.
I was ready for a break, so I'm very happy. Tell us about the season as a whole. It's been a challenging year, not to kill the mood too much, but challenging year. Performance-wise, the workload on the team has been insane, particularly not helped by the issues around the engines for Bathurst, all that sort of stuff. How are you reflecting on 2024 as we sort of sit here at the end of the year?
Well, I'm pretty pleased it's behind us. It was an extraordinary year, and it really tested the mettle of everyone at DJR and at Motorsport Powertrains. You alluded to what happened in the lead up to Bathurst, rebuilding 20 engines in 10 days, 10 of them with new crankshafts, thrust bearings. It was a Herculean task. I look back on it now and I'm not sure how we actually managed to get through it, but we accelerated probably 12 months of development for a crankshaft into that period. And we couldn't have done that without the support of Ford Performance. But I think the most satisfying part of that rather traumatic episode isn't that all the Fords finished the race, and we didn't win, so the fact that we finished was sort of secondary to that. But the most exciting thing for me was how the Ford teams worked together. Walkinshaw sent a couple of people up to help us with the engine builds. Tickford provided a car to go to the proving ground to do some noise tests and some torsional studies. And Blanchard's provided us a car to do testing with that engine. We put the better part of 1,000 kilometres on an engine with that crankshaft before we even got to Bathurst. So we couldn't have done that without the support of the other teams, and that was something that I don't think I've ever seen in my time in the sport.
Do you sometimes wonder why you bother being the homologation team? Like, you've talked about the drain that it can take on the performance of the team just because of the amount of human resource, financial resource, time and energy that goes into it. What's the sort of upside benefit that makes it worth doing? Do you sometimes question whether it is worth doing?
It's a tricky one. The investment that's required is huge. And taking on an engine shop that... we didn't want to take on that engine program. And we obviously and ultimately found that it was full of landmines that probably would have been uncovered anyway, like the crankshaft. It's a very challenging thing. But we have a responsibility to our partners, to our staff, and we feel a responsibility to Ford to do the best job that we possibly can. And we back ourselves in with that investment. We back ourselves in with that personnel. And we demonstrate we're prepared to make sacrifices with our own performance to achieve the best outcomes that we can.
So where do you think the sport is at with Parity now? There was a far more even spread of wins, Chevrolet to Ford across the season, but Bathurst was still pretty lopsided, which is obviously
Yeah.
a very important event.
Yeah, I mean, look, my personal opinion and that of our organisation is that a Ford can win the championship but can't win Bathurst. Now, that's not the view of Supercars. Supercars are quite firm that if a Ford had track position a couple of months ago, it likely would have taken the checkered flag first. And maybe there's some merit in that argument, but I think we need to do better. They are investing heavily in effectively exploring what we believe is the critical factor that prohibits the Ford from being as competitive as it needs to be at Bathurst. But I think we've put the bulk of the parity argument in the rearview mirror. It is fine-tuning now, but we're under no illusions that the job isn't done. And with Walkinshaw bringing Toyota into the mix, we have an obligation to work with them and ensure that they're kept honest at the same time. Because to land the white whale like Toyota and have them enter the sport after 30 years of trying is an extraordinary news story for our game and for what we do. It's fantastic. So these guys have got to get it right, and we want them to get it right. But it also presents an opportunity for us to ensure that we have a level playing field going forward, and that's really all that we're asking for. We're not asking for any more than that.
Is there any sort of concerns that when Toyota does come in, I mean, we've seen that generally with these parity things, it's not a case of, okay, let's just take that car and bring it to that level. There always ends up being a bit of give and take. Do you sort of go, whew, there's potentially going to be a bit of ongoing tweaking on our side as Supercars tries to get that balance right with 3 different cars?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there has to be. I mean, the cars aren't the same. They're not the same. Yes, the chassis are the same. Yes, the underlying vehicle has a lot of control parts, but the aero elements, I mean, the shapes of the cars are not the same. What Supercars have developed with Dynamic at Windshear in the States basically means that they can bring in another car and they've got a baseline there that they can match. We have a lot of faith and confidence in that program. The architecture of the Toyota engine is very similar to the Coyote, so there's opportunities for us to work with Walkinshaw to understand what they're doing with their development to ensure that we can both benefit together. Because one of the things that's been a factor for us this year has been working both with Craig Hasted and with Motec with the control strategies around variable cam. It's not a straightforward affair. We haven't had an engine of this type in our category before, and it's got a lot more moving parts than the other one. It's a significantly complicated beast, and like I said, the job's not done in getting that right.
So you mentioned before a critical element with your package that's missing for Bathurst. What is it? Is it engine related? Is it the high-speed drag that some people are talking about?
Look, Supercars are doing a lot of work at the moment, and there's going to be a test at the Bend in December, which is going to allow them to explore some of the various hypotheses that they have in terms of what's actually going on and what's different from, for example, how the cars were presented at Windshear to how they're racing now. But in terms of Bathurst itself, you just need to think about where the place is, the elevation. There's some rudimentary ways in which we can effectively invalidate or validate our theories. We believe we've been able to demonstrate that there is merit in the argument that we have, that with the barometric pressure at Bathurst, that has an impact on our motor. And it may lead to having a different spec at Bathurst. But for us, we have to work with Supercars to validate or invalidate that theory and then work out what to do about it next.
Is that something you've already worked with Walkinshaws on a bit? Because I think that was a theory with them as well, that it was, altitude was making, and I think they've even done a bit of...
They have, yeah. We've been very open with the Ford teams. Particularly, as soon as we took over the engine program, we just opened the kimono and we shared with them what we were doing, what we believed to be strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. Because there's a lot of talent in these other teams. And it's not just about sharing information with your customers. It's giving folks who have a significant amount of experience the opportunity to give something back to that as well. So we've been very open with what we believe is happening at that particular place. And full credit to Supercars, whilst they don't, like I mentioned, they don't believe that there is... They believe there's merit in what we're saying, but they don't necessarily believe that we're going to find the smoking gun
but
when we look into that.
The track position argument's slightly flawed because track position, obviously, there's then a delta that has to be overcome to overtake somebody. It's not that simple, right? It's not a sign that cars are even.
I would very much agree with your comments, but I do respect Supercars' position. They have access to a lot more data than what we do. They have access to high-speed cameras through the broadcast. They obviously have access to. There are more sensors on the car than what the teams effectively can access.
Yeah.
So they have the ability to compare all the cars. So when they do speak with a degree of authority. But our role is to challenge that, and we need to challenge it with science. We need to challenge it with data and with evidence, and that's precisely what we've sought to prosecute.
When you talk about hypothesis, though, I mean, there's been a lot of investment in the wind tunnel program, in the transient dyno work overseas as well. We were kind of told that this would lay out where everything was at, and we were going to eliminate the question marks based on this. Is there any concern from your side as a homologation team that it doesn't really feel like we've completely worked out what's going on with these cars?
Yeah, look, there's no question that the investment from Supercars and from race into getting this right it's beyond reproach. It's extraordinary. They said they'd go to Windshear and do full-scale wind tunnel testing with the cars, and they did that at significant expense. The AVL program took a little bit longer because it was about identifying the right facility to do that test. And yeah, it's world's best practice, but there isn't any other category in the world that's trying to paritise within a 15th of 1%. Two cars that are very, very different. So for me, it's more fine-tuning now than fundamentals. I mean, the AVL program was a terrific example. There was a series of things that we wanted to evaluate and compare between the two engines, even things like inertia, and they're all the same. So it shows that the tools that we use here aren't that bad, and some of it's theoretical. But when we went to the tunnel, it was really wide open throttle that was the focus of what we were looking at. Everything else was much of a muchness, which was a relief because we've invested a significant amount of time and money into making this engine as best as we can within the confines of the rules.
Another way you could test parity is by taking a top Chevrolet driver, their engineer, another engineer, their chassis, and bring them to, say, a Ford team. Thankfully, you're doing that for 2025. Is that going to answer some questions as well?
Yes.
What was the process of getting Brodie across to the team from very early in the season when there was some issues there with Erebus? It was obvious that he was going to be on the move, and there was clearly a lot of interest in him. Take us through the process of how you got him to DJR.
Well, I'm not going to take you through the full process, but basically, he's a guy who is an exceptional talent, and obviously our 2023 champion and our 2024 Bathurst 1000 winner, an exceptional talent, and we're delighted to have him join the Shell V-Power Racing team in 2025. He's going to be an outstanding recruit for us. He brings a lot more than just his talents behind the wheel. He has a thorough understanding of how these cars work. It makes him very different from every other driver on the grid, and we're lucky to get him. Every team wanted his signature, and we effectively brought him into the fold of what we wanted to do and what our ambitions were and what we're prepared to invest. And we're very fortunate that he agreed to join us on that basis. But it was a very tricky beginning of the year for him and for Erebus. Barry Ryan's a friend. I'm not going to comment on any of that, but the fact that they got back together and won a Bathurst 1000 is a pretty extraordinary thing. But for any other suggestion or suggestions or I suppose thoughts as to how that all transpired, there's not really much more I can give you on that.
Is there maybe a case of, obviously, I think it's fair to say you're a good politician.
I think I just proved that, yes.
Yeah. Not just within the confines of the politics of motorsport, but outside of that as well. You have an understanding of that business. That was a tricky situation because it wasn't surely as straightforward as where you would normally say, right, that driver's coming off contract at the end of this year. We can start talking to him around here. We can, the waters were muddied by his contractual situation and the spotlight that was on that. At Erebus, was there a bit of leveraging those relationships with Barry? I know you've always gone on well with Betty as well. Can you offer any sort of insight into?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, I can. I mean, there are a couple. Obviously, a year's a long time, and a lot of events transpired. I offered support to Betty and Barry in a team owner meeting early on in the year, and it just expressed, I suppose, some exasperation that these folks were in the situation they're in. There's always two sides to every story, but ultimately we started the year with the reigning champion not in the car and not driving anything else. I mean, you can sort of stomach that when you've got an SVG going overseas, or well, he didn't go as reigning champion, but you get what I mean.
Yep.
Scotty McLaughlin leaving in 2020 to go and race IndyCar. It's a different set of circumstances when that happens. So all that you can do and all anyone can do is express support. Express support for the kid who's sitting on the couch. Express support for the team who aren't quite sure what happens next. But when it became clear that Brodie was thinking about what would come next for him, I reached out to Betty and sought her blessing to begin negotiations with Brodie, and that's precisely how it played out.
And bringing Brodie's engineer, George Commons, on board, and also going with the Erebus chassis, which are made by James White down in Mount Gambier. Is that about getting everything together that Brodie wants and likes to make him as happy as possible?
Look, it's a massive part of that. I mean, George has made it clear that he wants to go with Brodie because he sees him as a once-in-a-generation talent, as we all do. But George is someone who's very well known to our organisation, having worked there before. He and Mark Fenning, who's in charge of our engineering department and has been a massive part of all of these high-profile recruits, they went to university together. Got a bloke named Frank Evans who works for us in engineering as well. The guy's a mad scientist. He went to university with those two blokes. So there's a triumvirate of guys who are working for us now who started their engineering careers together. So it's a pretty extraordinary story, and it's something we're really excited about. George is just a great person. DJ and Jilly absolutely love the guy. Obviously, he engineered Stevie J back in the day. But getting George on board is a massive coup for us. And in relation to the chassis, when you hire a guy like Brodie and he says, "I want that," you want to give the guy what he needs. I mean, one of the things that I enjoy doing at the end of every season is saying to our race drivers, "What do you need to win?" And if they say nothing, I expect them to win. But if they give you a shopping list, by hell, go and get that shopping list. Because a driver's book of excuses is thicker than this delightful KTM book right here. I mean, it is. But the more you can do as a team and as an organisation to show support and to give these blokes the tools of the trade that they need to get the job done, what it does is it gives them confidence that you believe in them. It gives the driver confidence that you're prepared to do whatever it takes for them to win. So deciding to change chassis, as difficult as that was because of our relationship with Paul Seprinich and Pace Innovations, and it was difficult. As difficult as it is, it's also a simple decision.
Another thing you might have on that list for going into a season, first year with that driver and engineer in your team, would be a championship format where it's all on the last round, which is exactly what they've given you with the finals. Is that a real boost for you guys?
Well, look, I've said this on the record previously, but it gives us a year to get our shit together. We've thoroughly underperformed in 2024, and the magnitude of that is not lost on any of us. But there's rhyme and reason for that. In 2025, we have the opportunity to really gel as an organisation, take our time to find our feet, hover in the top 10, and we've got a final series that we believe is advantageous to what that program looks like for us. There is no way that we're rolling out at Sydney Motorsport Park in February next year and we're going to see two Shell V-Power Mustangs on the front row and we're going to win 1-2. We have to be realistic. It takes time to build. We're not where we want to be. Recruiting these people and bringing them on board is a hell of a start, but to gel as a team, it takes time. So for sure, the final series is something that works in our favour this year. Might not necessarily work in our favour forever, but particularly for this year, for us to really get our act together, gel as a team, and execute, it couldn't be better.
I do want to point out that at the season launch in 2019, your season launch, you did say to Stefan and I that there was no way that Gen 2 Mustang would be up to speed for the first race at Adelaide, and from memory it went pretty well, I think.
It had gone pretty well at the pre-season test, I think, as well.
So forgive us if sometimes when you make these bold predictions of not going very well that we might be a little sceptical.
I have no recollection of this. What I will say, and you blokes wouldn't remember this, but I've had a lot of people comment on it, so I'm not sure if Supercars ran something in the lead up to Bathurst, but first round was Adelaide in 2019, and apparently on camera, as Scott McLaughlin gets out of the car, I make a beeline for him, and I'm whispering in his ear with his helmet on. I've had a lot of people comment about that to me just in the past couple of weeks, which is really quite extraordinary. But I do remember what I said to him. I basically just said, kid, be humble, be humble, be humble, be humble. Because we knew that car was good. We probably didn't know how good, but for sure.
That's because you were using a different timing line to everyone at the Phillip Island test, right? So maybe you weren't too sure how good it was.
That's a fairly standard approach. You always put out your own beacons, and then you run your own segments of the track so that you can sort of keep your powder dry a little bit. But that was an extraordinary car. I mean, we did everything we could to maximise what that was. Sort of took a bit of inspiration from what Triple Eight did with the ZB, with some of our composite panels and things. It's quite interesting. I mean, you talked about the Toyota before, and it reminds me of 2018 when we won the championship with Scotty McLaughlin in an FGX Falcon that had absolutely no right to win against the brand new ZB. So it is possible our expectations are always that when a new car's homologated, it's automatically top of the pops. I think there's better controls to prevent that from happening now, but we've also proven in the past that doesn't necessarily mean, I guess, victory by default.
I don't want to harp on too much about team performance, but I think it's something that it's not a secret to you guys that not being up the front competing for race wins is not right. That's where you want to be. Think back to, we've had Scott McLaughlin on this series as well. In 2021, he was jumping on social media defending the team because there was so much noise around the fact that things weren't really going as well as they obviously had been with his dominant era. It feels like that obviously slows down with time when you're not competing for championships regularly.
Yeah.
What stings more, when you're copping the heat or when you start to go, hang on, are people starting to think that this is just normal for us now?
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I mean, it's when you accept it as normal that it becomes a problem. So in 2021, 2022, we still won a lot of races. And we were second at a team's championship, but we didn't execute, we didn't fire the way that we should have. I am principally responsible for that. I went absent without leave due to some health challenges, and that was why it was important that when I got my shit together, so to speak, I came back to the team at the end of last year, and pretty quickly it was obvious why we weren't delivering on results, and that was when the focus became all about 2025.
We've talked about some of your recruits. Ben Croak left the team midway through the year. Do you feel like structure-wise there's a hole there? Are you still looking for anybody else, or have you got everything that you need?
Yeah, look, we've got some announcements to make over the course of the next few weeks. Ben's a terrific guy, and his contribution to the success of our team cannot be understated. He's a remarkable bloke, and parting company with him still stings. It's a tough business sometimes. It's a tough business, but one of the things that we have to acknowledge, and we've made other decisions. We've got other people finishing up with us this week and next week who have been part of the journey with us for a long time. And we want to celebrate their contribution and show gratitude for everything that they did. But if you don't change things, you accept what you're doing. And I'm not going to sit here and accept mediocrity. So yeah, let's make the tough decisions to go better. But you know what? If it doesn't work out, that's on me. If it doesn't work out, that's on us. But hell, if we want to sit idly by and accept mediocrity, we are in the wrong business.
One of the people departing is Anton De Pasquale, who Brodie effectively replaces.
No. We don't. Drivers aren't replaced. Drivers move on, and new drivers come on board.
I'd love to live in the world that you live in, but there was such promise there, and he came on board after Scott McLaughlin departed. Yeah. Why didn't it work out?
It's a tough one. I mean, Anton, super professional guy, and fit the mould of our organisation almost instantly. Why didn't it work out? I've got a personal opinion on that. I certainly don't have one that's for public scrutiny or something that I'm going to explain to you two blokes with the cameras on. But his contribution to the team is not insignificant. I mean, I believe he's the fourth. He's won on the all-time race winners for DJR. I believe he's fourth behind DJ, John Bower, and Scotty Mack. So his contribution's been significant, and honestly, we wish him all the best at Team 18, and are very grateful for his contribution to our team over a number of years. Not an easy decision.
You kind of led the outside the box thinking when it came for the CEO position at the team when you signed David Noble, who came in with no motorsport background but a footy background. We've seen other teams start to head down that path now as well. What's your reflection on that? What are we 2 years into that sort of experiment, I guess?
Oh, look, to me, it's not an experiment. David Noble is a terrific sports administrator and brings something very different to our organisation that we haven't had before.
Actually, he will tear me up for calling it an experiment. He's
He
done that
will-
before as
he
well,
will
so I
not-
look forward to the text message tonight.
He won't appreciate that at all. But
He has a very friendly tear-up style. That is one of the good things about David.
It's certainly a long experiment. If it's an experiment, you're still saying that after 2 years.
given that it's not your first time having a crack, I suspect the next one's not going to be quite as
No, but
polite.
I mean it in a positive way. He
Look,
knows
he's a terrific guy, and what he brings to our organisation is structure, people skills, and a real focus on athlete management. And he's gone from 40 athletes down to 2, but also personnel development and management. It's a very different way of approaching people to what we're used to. And he's a great addition. He's great in the commercial space. He's learning the sport quickly. He knows what he doesn't know, which is massively important when you bring someone in from the outside. If you bring someone in from the outside and they're an instant expert, it's never going to work. If you bring someone in from the outside and say, look, I can help here, but tell me what you need in this space. That's exactly how Nobes has approached it. I love working with the guy. He's just a terrific bloke. And David Noble, myself, Mark Fenning, and Brett Ralph work together very closely. On a day-to-day basis, it's the three of us. But Ralphie brings an enormous amount of experience to the table as well. We've got a great group. I mean, I know it sounds like we're top-heavy because very similar to Speedcafe, everyone's got editor titles. But we've got some terrific people. And we're still recruiting. We're still actively recruiting. And we've got some more recruits to announce over the course of the next few weeks in the lead-up to the pre-season test.
I mean, David's experience with athlete management, when you look at Brodie coming in, who is coming off a challenging year, there's no doubt about that, surely that's going to be a handy skill for him to have, to understand, athlete psychology and that sort of stuff.
There might be a bit going on in that space. Yeah.
It's also good for the sport to have people familiar with other sports, whether that's David Noble and the AFL or Brett Ralph with his various involvements.
He collects sports
He
franchises.
does.
He collects them. It's sort of like a mantelpiece.
You're just one on the mantelpiece.
We are.
What's your read on the overall health of Supercars at the moment? There's been some big announcements lately and also a media rights deal being negotiated at the moment, which is going to be very important.
Look, I cannot fault the intent of the executive of Supercars and the shareholders of Supercars. Look, I'm incredibly conflicted in that I'm on the Supercars Commission and on the Supercars board. But these folks do what they say they'll do. And you've got to give them some credit for that. Like the Parity stuff, it took a bit longer than what perhaps we would have liked, but they did it and they spent the money. But really, the proof is in the pudding. And Toyota is entering Supercars. We've got a final season next year. We are maximising our deal within the current broadcast arrangements to have a 13-round calendar next year. The teams have all agreed to do more motor racing. It's fantastic. It's going to be great for the fans. And this is just the start. So you also need to remember with Supercars Television, basically Foxtel pay for effectively a world feed that's fully produced, ready to go. So there's a huge burden on Supercars for us to go racing in terms of their cost base. So when fans say we should be racing 15, 16 times a year, there isn't anyone who disagrees with them, except the big question mark of who pays for that. So there's opportunity with the new broadcast deal, but these folks have worked and thought outside the box. They've invested significantly to have that 13th event, but then all the teams needed to agree to go against the team's racing charter and race more kilometres per annum and per event than what we've already technically agreed to. So everyone has had the wherewithal to improve the product, and I'm excited about that. I think the final series is going to be fantastic, and it's something new, and it's something we'll continue to tweak and develop over time. But the Toyota thing, that's the real jewel in the crown. I mean, you think of someone like Tony Cochran, the ultimate song and dance man. He came out, I think it might have been with one of your competitors and not with you folks, but he came out and said that he traced the white whale himself, but it took bloody Ahab Neil Crompton to lock it in and make it all happen. I mean, it's an extraordinary story. So when we talk about the health of Supercars, I think even if you were to talk to Shane Howard or to Barclay Nettlefold, any of those guys, they would identify the same potential areas of improvement that we would, because they have that understanding and they have that commitment to invest and make it better. But if you look at what they've done within the confines of what they have, which is a limited rights deal and bringing in a new manufacturer, it's truly extraordinary. So full credit to them. I think there's a lot more work to be done, but they're not shying away from that either.
Just to clarify, we did repackage those Tony Cochran quotes that were from 3AW, I think, very cleverly, and it did very well for us. So don't give the competitors too much credit right now. But
is that SC? Does that stand for Super Clicks?
Oh, I like that. It's been
not the most insulting version of that that's ever come out.
There's been a few other meanings for it bandied about the media centre this year, I can assure you. That's so I'll take that one.
Is it true there was a blow up at the Bathurst Media Centre?
Oh, I didn't see this.
A blow up as in like a crankshaft breaking, or
my understanding is that there was a blow up at the Bathurst Media Centre. Perhaps we could talk about that.
I didn't see anything like that with my own eyes, so I couldn't possibly comment on that. So
you just deployed a Francis circuit. Well done.
Maybe that's a. Well, this is a good time to lob this question in.
Here we go.
What number's Brodie going to run in 2025? Because I have a theory on this that
Do
I'd like
you?
to float to you.
Well, look, listen. I will humour you, and take stock of your theory.
Mm-hmm.
But if you think for 1 minute, other than an obscure facial gesture, that I'm going to give anything away, you listen.
Do you want me to say the number, or should I just keep it to myself?
You pricks have broken more of my stories than what I've broken. So, we do the press release up, and it's like, fuck, they've read about it already on bloody Speedcafe. So you blokes have done an extraordinary job, but it has made it very difficult for me to say, guess what, we've hired George Commons. Oh, wait, Speedcafe wrote about that 4 months ago. Holy shit, we've hired Tom Moore. Oh, Christ, AVO has already put a story up on that.
Todd Hazelwood's coming. Wait a second.
We're running Erebus chassis, and we're working with Barry, we're working with Jimmy. It's going to be fantastic. Oh, shit, there it is, and the boys all know about it because I've all read about it, because the #1 most visited website in 10 Emery Street, Stapleton, because let me tell you, I checked, is yours.
So this is why you keep hiring people, just to try to get one out there before we report on it.
You blokes? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what it is, whether you've bugged our boardroom or whether you're somehow tapping my phone. I don't know what you're doing, but
it's almost like we're just well-trained journalists that are good at their job. I don't know.
I
actually don't know.
It's almost like you're doing your job. But no, look, it's interesting, right? So we've had discussions, particularly this year, where you blokes have sort of said, look, can't hold off any longer, because you've known what we've been up to and things. And you have to respect the profession. It's always give and take. Like, we rely on you folks to talk about what we're doing, so that our supporters and our fans know what's going on. Like, you folks deliver a service to us, but likewise, it's a symbiotic relationship. You need us to do things so you can write about them. We need you to write about them so people know what the hell's going on. So, let's all agree it's a mutually symbiotic relationship.
You don't want me to say what the number is, do you?
But
that's where this is going.
It's stalling tactics.
You can throw it out. I'll find it amusing. But the point I'm getting at is, I got a lot of respect for you blokes, because over the course of this year, when you've had an idea of what we're doing, you've at least given me the courtesy of saying, look, I can't hold off any longer, or I can give you a day or two. And we've got enough of a professional relationship where for me, it's a case of, well, you guys are doing your job, so off you go, and we'll figure the rest out. I just have a heap of disgruntled blokes at 10 Emery Street going, why don't you tell us before we read about it? Well, I literally had 35 minutes.
Sounds like two of us are doing a great job. Step up, to be fair.
Wow. I was going to say, Carl's in the room. Should we? Are you doing your annual reviews? What's going on?
This is great.
Yeah.
Can I be your manager?
He bought the booze and
I was going to say, can I be the manager? I'll clip these blokes 10%. It'll be fantastic.
Yeah, good. Just anyway, so
all right, throw the number.
Thoughts on the number 38?
Interesting. We will definitely be running a different number to 11.
Yep.
And we will announce that at the beginning of the year.
Is there a reason like that 11's not going to continue?
Well, the reason why we picked 11... So 11 was an interesting one. So one of the things I like to do with drivers, I rang Anton in 2020 and said, mate, give me a number that's special to you. I said, these are some numbers that work with us. So at the time, I think I said to him 71. I think I said 38. I think I said 16. So just some numbers that would sort of fit in and around the mix. And he said, well, I won a lot of races in Europe with 11. I said, well, Larry's number. If Larry gives us his blessing to run it, we'll make it happen. So DJ and I rang LP, and he gave us his blessing to run the number, so we ran the number. So that number is associated with Anton more so than the team. And for us, it's just about a bit of an opportunity for a refresh, I guess.
Well, thank you for coming in. It's been
That's it?
highly entertaining. Well, you got more? Give us more if you got more.
I was expecting... You don't have anything more sort of... I don't know.
We've actually run out of questions.
That's just got Pac-Man on it. So
I was expecting some controversy.
I think you've potentially given us some of that
Well,
already.
I might have been in this studio recently, sitting precisely where you were sitting, AVL, and I suspect that this will have come out by the time that drops. I am going to get in so much trouble.
Don't think we've liquored you up quite as hard as maybe our mates over there at Apex Hunters United have.
yeah, that impersonation of Scott Pye you did just before was fantastic.
Thank you. I did. Look, I've been practicing, but those blokes do a good job, and yeah, they bought the ginger beers on that occasion. I'm more than happy to assist with you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the KTM Summer Grill. With each episode, we are giving away one of these cool KTM goodie bags. Don't miss your chance to win. If you're watching via Speedcafe, enter your details below. If you're watching on YouTube, the link is in the description.